John Carpenter's The Thing fell flat with critics when it came out in 1982 and has become a cult classic since. But how does it land with somebody watching it for the first time in 2024? Let's talk about it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back. The Eye of the Storm podcast. Let's just get straight into it. Daniel.
This week, we're talking about John Carpenter's The Thing from 1982, which I know well, and it's one of my favorite movies. And you have just seen it for the first time. Just to briefly summarize before we launch into the discussion, The Thing is about an Arctic expedition that discovers an alien life form in the ice, which promptly begins to take them over one by one, and it follows the group as they try to survive and figure out who is real and who is being impersonated. So, Jonathan, what's your takeaway from The Thing?
I was kind of shocked. Firstly, I've seen the second movie. So the second one is a prequel, right? The one that came out in 2000. Okay, cool. The first one, this one is definitely way better than the second one. Because I actually enjoyed the second one. Daniel, I'm guessing you didn't really enjoy the second one too much, the prequel.
It's been a while since I saw it. I remember it as being not that good and kind of redundant, but not actually bad. That's kind of high. But I've also not seen it in years. Yeah. So I don't know how I would feel about it if I watched it again. But yeah, that was kind of my takeaway. My takeaway back then.
Yeah. Well, the second one, I actually thought it was good. One thing that I took from the second one was that the monster was disturbing. Obviously whenever it would transform and stuff. So like just from watching the Thing 2, the second one, felt like disturbing. Whereas this one, I was actually kind of shocked that it was an 80 movie. It was an 80s movie, number one. And number two, it was actually way more disturbing than the one that came out in the 2000s. Like with this movie, it was good. Like it was really good. I think in the first 10 to 20 minutes, my mind was already in the game. So I was kind of like on my phone and I was a bit like I was just out of it, right? But then the more I started watching, I was like, yo, this movie is actually like just the whole theme of who's who and who's what is what I really enjoyed about the movie, as well as the monster. Like I just felt like the deaths and the transformations were like brutal, like and disturbing as hell. Like I was like, whoa. Firstly, the design, like just the aesthetic of the monster looked amazing. That's why I was just very shocked that this was coming out from the 80s. But I really liked this film. It was really good. I was surprised. I was really surprised. I wasn't expecting to like it because I feel like I've got like the wrong impression of old movies. Because generally I feel like they're very slow and like the acting isn't too great. However, this one, it was subtle, uncomfortable, mainly with the monster. And you just felt the tension and you just felt the uncertainty in like every movement made from the characters, their whereabouts. Everything that they did was questionable and it wasn't even intentional. It's like they were trying to make decisions for themselves, but that decision can cost them their lives because it raises suspicion amongst the groups. And obviously everyone's now suspicious. Everyone's like, and it slowly led to like a period where sides were being created, which I really enjoyed too. But then that ended up deteriorating once they were suspicious of each other too. So I'm like, yeah, this movie is like, it was very like, I wouldn't say it was complexly made, but it was well made.
You touched on a bunch of different topics there, and I think maybe first one we can launch into is the monster effects, right? Which I think is the absolute highlight. And this came out in 1982, and this was kind of the golden age of practical monster effects. So if this one surprised you, you might want to watch more movies like that, where this whole look and the way they made, like we saw already Alien, which was kind of in the same vein, right? Like a practical monster, like in Alien, the facehugger was stitched together from some seafood they found at the local market, but it looked like a real animal, right? And this one doesn't look real exactly, but it looks like it's really there. Whereas in the 2011, I think, remake, that's like the silly age of CGI, right? Where they used a lot of CGI, but it didn't look quite as good as it could have. And I think it's kind of like two ways of making monster effects kind of colliding, where the 82 version is kind of the practical way at its height, and the 2011 version is kind of the early CGI at its hokiest, more or less. And I think that's why the two don't really compare that well, right? And I think that's because, and that's why this one works so well. Everything looks like it's there, and it's gory, and it's visceral, and it really feels like I think there's one really bad effect in this where they do the blood test, and
then
just
it jumps, and then is it that scene where he ends up eating the other guy, like he ends up opening
that's what I'm getting at is McReady holds up the petri dish with the blood, and then he puts in the wire to test it, but it's and then it jumps out of the petri dish. But it's very clearly a plastic hand, like a prop hand. And if you watch it in Blu-ray, especially, it's very obvious. And that is, but because they had to do the effect, I'm guessing like there was like maybe like a pipe through the hand or something to make it jump out, or whatever. However they did it, but it's very obviously like a fake hand, like a plastic hand. But every other effect looks amazing, I think.
That's what I'm gonna say. Besides that, I was so surprised that it looked so good. Like, so was this like a revolutionary movie? As in, like, was this pretty much a film where you wouldn't like was the start or the birth of like effects like that in other movies as well?
That really starts in the 70s and then goes into the 80s and then eventually gets superseded by bad CGI. Okay. So this did not invent this, I don't think, but it's using the technology to its fullest. Okay. So these kinds of practical creature effects and this kind of look is something you see throughout 80s, like late 70s to mid 80s or so, sci-fi horror movies. I don't think it revolutionized the technology, but it used it in a very creative way. Like every creature design is different, like in every scene it's different, and that's baked into the story, or it's not just random things happening, but this is just how the thing is, right? But every time you see it, it looks different because it's change, it's mutation, and it's mimicry and all of those things. So I think that really helps it hold up in a way that like early CGI doesn't, because it just looks that good and it's detailed. And if you look at it in a better format, it looks better, right? To me, like you could even like this movie would be great even if everything else about it was terrible. Just the monster effects themselves just make it above average.
Honestly, it was creative as well, especially the scene for me. It was the highlight was when the doctor was it that scene where he was like he got his arms cut off while putting his hands by the monster's stomach.
Yeah.
That scene was crazy. Number one, it was unexpected, and it was just like just watching the kills and the way that it happened, and just the transformations, and like just the way that the monster was just like freaking transforming into whatever it was transforming into. It makes me wonder, like, who is sick enough to think of like just a script and just the visual elements of this is crazy. Like, honestly, I wanted to delve into the minds of the creators of this movie, because so did this movie have like any influences, or was this like an original?
So it's based on a short story from the 30s, which was then adapted into like a schlocky sci-fi story in the 50s, and then this is essentially a remake of an adaptation, essentially. And it was panned at the time for being dark and visceral and bleak and just no fun. And then over time, people kind of recognized it for how good it is. Wow. But yeah, just to stay on the creature effects for 1 second, like every scene is different, and it's kind of like it's like a shapeshifter, right? It kind of goes into like the different forms depending on what it is. Like maybe one of my favorite one is where they have a corpse that's the thing, and I think that's the autopsy scene, and they kill it, and the head kind of falls off and its tongue kind of shoots out and it wraps it around a chair and it just pulls itself away, and then it sprouts spider legs and runs away. It's like every moment is different, but it kind of feels like a continuation, right? It's not just random stuff happening. It's actually like it's evolving before your eyes.
And it felt more disturbing than stuff that you'd see in anime. And in anime, you see some real disturbing stuff. So the fact that it does that in a movie, in a live action, I'm like, whoa, like you sick and mofos. Like, well done, congratulations to them. But it was just remarkably done. So what do you know? Did this film have a big budget?
So this had a $15 million budget back in 1982. And it had a $20 million box office, so very mediocre success. So just to compare it with other movies of the time, like Terminator from 2 years later, had a $6 million budget. So this might be a decently high budgeted movie for the time. I don't really know the production background of it, like how it was made, but I think that like a lot of that money went into kind of just the creature effects and
definitely that's what I was asking. Cause like it's just was you could tell it had to be, because everything about it was complex. So for you, in terms of the thing, is the highlight the creature effects, or is it the story? How do you feel about the story numbers?
So
besides the creature effects.
So for me, the whole thing about finding an alien in the ice and you don't know what it is, and it's you slowly start to get information about what it is and how it behaves and how you can interact with it. Like that is something that is inherently interesting to me. And this whole thing about like I'm a sucker for this whole crime scene horror kind of thing, by which I mean you don't see the events themselves happening, you see the aftermath of it, right? And you kind of piece it together from context clues and from evidence, right? So when they go to the Norwegian base to find out what it is, and like the buildings have been torched, and there's a bloody axe just sticking into the wall, and there's broken glass everywhere, and there's blood on the floor. Like each of that kind of tells a story about what happened. And that kind of then mirrors with what happens later on when they start fighting the thing, right? But just them walking through this abandoned research station in the Arctic, and clearly something terrible has happened here. And you like with every scene, with every camera shot you get, just a little bit more information, you get another piece of the puzzle. That is something that I'm really into. So I don't actually need to see the thing happen. I just need to see its effects and its aftermath. And that's almost more interesting than if you see just I think one of the things that makes the remake, or sorry, the prequel so redundant, is that we don't need to know how it took over the Norwegian base. We already know how it operates, and we saw the aftermath of it taking them over. So to me, that whole kind of thing is really interesting, and there are not that many movies that actually do this, and fewer that do it well. Yeah. So the fact that this movie does all of those things borderline perfectly is what makes this movie so cool to me. And then you get this whole paranoid story about who can we trust and who has been taken over and how do we figure it out and how do we survive. And then we get all the way to the end and we still don't know if it's a happy ending, right? It's deliberately made ambiguous, but not in a cheap way. It's just built into the story that you cannot tell who is the thing until it's too late. Like you have two survivors in the end. It could be one, or like one of them could be infected, the other could be infected, or both, or neither. Both probably not, right? Because then they would know. But like you have no idea, and it's ambiguous, and you can like people have speculated endlessly, and it's not just contrived for its own sake. It's like the story is built on this ambiguity, right? That you don't know who is the thing until it starts coming after you. And so it doesn't feel cheap. It's bleak, and it's kind of leaves you hanging in midair, but it also is the only thing that could have happened, right? Like it would be contrived if they knew for a fact that both of them were uninfected, right? So, and you don't even if they are uninfected, you don't even know if they will survive because the base has been destroyed, and I think they called for help, but nobody's answered the phone for weeks, right? So they may not even survive, even if both of them are uninfected. So this entire thing just hangs together, and in the middle, we have the slow escalations of them. Like intelligent, capable people trying to figure this out and survive and try to get an advantage and try to outsmart this thing, which is kind of a wild animal, but also more than that, right? And I think this is up there with Alien and even probably better in terms of how this whole thing unfolds, right? Like I think there are very clear parallels in terms of how they kind of figure out the properties of the thing and how they kind of start gathering weapons and they devise the blood test and they try to keep each other accountable and all of those things, right? It all just works. It all just fits together into this giant mosaic. And it's just borderline flawless.
No, I agree. And for me personally, I think you even touched on a point where I think you mentioned paranoia. And I think that's what kind of separates this film from like other type of group survival type of movies. Because for me, I love group survival type films, right? So for me, the reason why I felt like this was a bit different, especially with the cliffhanger, because those type of cliffhangers you see a lot, right? Where you just don't know, is ambiguous. But with this one, I felt like it felt different because of the events prior to that, whereas it just played on paranoia so well. And like you said, like they're all smart, you know what I'm saying? They're all smart, you know what I'm saying? And then it got to the point where they were making dumb decisions, but those dumb decisions were triggered because they don't know who to trust. Someone could literally breathe funny and they'd question that breathing. They say, oh, so you know what I'm saying? Like, you weren't breathing like that before. Where did you go? So that's what just made that cliffhanger even way better because it's like I said, prior to that, you just didn't know who was who and what was what. So yeah, I think this was definitely more original and more original than these type of films. And I would agree. I do think I would say this is slightly better than Aliens, because even though it was not similar settings, but it's group survival as well, and they're both against, well, it's kind of similar settings, both against an extraterrestrial being. This one just felt more well put together in terms of the internal conflict that was going on amongst the teams.
I think both of them are up there in terms of the greatest sci-fi horror movies or sci-fi movies. And there was just a whole bunch in that era that really just really worked and really the genre at its peak. It's taste whether or not you rank one or the other higher than the other. But yeah, I think the Thing is a little bit more focused and just focused on this one thing, which is they're getting picked off one by one and they have to figure out who is infected and who isn't. And that's kind of the entire movie. And in between, you kind of have these little character moments that are not very clearly, there's not a lot of emphasis on it. So there's no time spent at all on the personal lives and the personal conflicts. It's all about this core story, and then the characterizations kind of is kind of the foundation of it, right? And Aliens might be a little bit bigger, and there's more stuff happening, and so it's taste which one of the two you like better. But yeah, I think they're both excellent. And the Thing, personally, is just more my thing in terms of what it's about and how it feels.
Also, it felt like the prequel was a remake of this. There wasn't anything original about it. I'm not trying to kind of, change the direction of the conversation, but it's still the Thing. And the prequel did feel like it was just a remake of it. So I wonder why they went for that decision, why they didn't try anything new. But
yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that decision-making process was. It feels a bit strange, right? Like you say, if you're gonna tell that story about how the Thing was first discovered, then and it could be different, right? Because it means the expedition in the original has a lot of information, right? They actually get a lot. One thing I wanted to bring up is how it's not really a mystery. If you look at the first 20 minutes of the movie, they go from first experience, from that opening scene where the Norwegian helicopter is chasing the dog, right? And it later turns out the dog is carrying the Thing or is the Thing, all the way to they know everything about where the Thing came from. That's 20 minutes. So it's not about discovering that. It's not about that mystery. It's not about discovering that information. It's handed to them basically without any effort. They figure it out basically immediately, and then the movie happens, which I think is kind of interesting. And I think if you're going to do a prequel to this, you could flip the script by having the mystery be everything. But then the audience already knows the mystery, so you kind of have to play this four-dimensional chess where you say, okay, the characters don't know, but the audience knows, and how is it interesting, and how do you construct something that's compelling with that information asymmetry, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they did. I think they kind of just retold this the story for the most part and kind of recreated the status quo in the Norwegian base that we saw at the start. And I've not seen it recently enough to kind of not remember the exact details, whether there's anything in it, but I don't remember anything. It just seems to be essentially be the same thing again, but slightly different.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It almost, I wouldn't say it looked identical, but scenes pretty much the influence was heavy. Of course, I understand it's a prequel, but still, there were certain scenes I was like, didn't that happen in the sequel? But which can't be possible because you know what I'm saying. Obviously, based on timeline, it just can't be possible. But yeah, that film, I didn't understand why they should have just made a remake if. That was the point.
Remake one of a borderline flawless movie. It's a lose-lose proposition, right? They should have done something like make it the events that we see the aftermath of in the 82 movie, but have the movie be about something else, right? I don't know, maybe there's something we don't know what they wanted to do with the spaceship, right? For example, maybe there could have been an interesting dynamic there or something. You can imagine something, but you would have to come up with something different, right? It can't again be one of us is infected and who is it and stuff like that. It can't be that.
One point which I did disagree on that you said, but I don't think is something to kind of I feel like it was one of those comments which it you didn't mean what you said. Well, you meant what you said, but it wasn't What I'm trying to say is, I felt like this movie was a mystery.
Mhm.
The reason why I did
In
feel
what
like it
way?
was a mystery is because not more so that the mystery was, oh, we need to find out what is the monster, like building up to like what the monster is, but the mystery was in obviously who is who.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm saying? So that's
Yeah.
why, which was interesting because that's different from like any other mystery movie, because usually it's led to that main antagonist and the revelation of that main antagonist, whereas this one, like, we already know what the antagonist is, but now, you know what I'm saying? But
Yeah,
now
no,
is the
no, no.
thing.
I don't think we're disagreeing. I'm just saying, if you approach this movie fresh, right, and you've never seen it before, and you since you just saw it for the first time, maybe you have a take on that. But like, if you approach this kind of story for the first time, you might think that the mystery of what happened in the Norwegian base is a big part of the movie, and it's not. Like, it's over very
Yes.
quickly, and there's no big mystery around what is the thing, right? They know, they find out very quickly. So that's kind of just what I was getting at. That you could have made a much bigger deal about it, and they didn't. They solved that mystery very quickly.
Do you think they should have?
No, actually, I like this because it keeps the movie moving forward much quicker, and it becomes about, like, if you just make it that mystery, you run the risk of it turning into like a lore dump, where like the movie just explains the story to the audience for a large chunk of the runtime. And this way, they essentially, the audience essentially finds out what the deal is very quickly, and then the mystery starts about, okay, we know what the thing can do, more or less. So, but that doesn't help us exactly figure out who has been affected and who hasn't, and that is where the suspense comes from, and the fun of the movie comes from not just the monster effects and the fights, but also from watching these characters work through their paranoia and realize that they have to trust each other, but they also can't fundamentally. Like, that's the fun, right? Like, just the mystery of, okay, what is the thing and where did it come from? Not terribly interesting. And the movie actually kind of preempts this. Like, the very first shot is like the saucer crashing on Earth, right? So there's no mystery whatsoever that this is an alien that crashed in Antarctica. And so when we realize that like the Norwegians found something, we know, oh, it's the alien. Has to be.
Yeah.
And what else would it be? Right? So it just, from the very first scene, it just preempts this question, and it just says that's not the mystery.
Do you think that didn't resonate with the audience at the time of its release?
So from what I have read, essentially people just didn't like the style. They thought it was too gory, it was too nihilistic, it was too dark. It had no redeeming features, and it's just about, like, it was perceived a lot like maybe Saw movies are today, like where you think, or Conjuring or something, where it's just cheap thrills and no substance. Except this movie actually has substance, right? It has like characters that are put into a difficult situation, and we watch them work through it. Like, there is in fact something going on here, which kind of brings me to like one of the big criticisms that this movie has, is that its characters are too weak, that they are all the same and they are all cardboard cut out and there's nothing to them and they're all interchangeable. So what do you think about the characters watching this?
I won't agree with it, but I will agree with it to an extent. I wouldn't agree with their weak point, but I didn't really see a difference in character due to the fact that there wasn't enough time spent on their personalities. Because obviously it was like our main concentration was on the main threat, so obviously that received more screen time, and obviously, and the paranoia, that was obviously the main point of the film, in terms of like the main message that was going to come across, in terms of like, okay, the paranoia is pretty much the selling point of this film. So I think because of that, we only saw characters in a state of fear, and which could be perceived as weakness, but in a state of fear and paranoia. So I don't think we had enough time to, see their personalities. So I understand why people may not like the film, if that's the reason, because a lot of the times the audience wanna resonate with the characters, right? They want to resonate with the characters. Obviously, that wasn't the film's goal. The film's purpose wasn't to kind of like go through each backstory in order for us to resonate with the character. It was more so they wanted us to focus on paranoia and how characters are dealing with that paranoia and what that paranoia does and how it can break down an individual, especially a team. So I think that was its main concern. But because, like I said, because a lot of people want to be able to resonate with the character, unfortunately, this film is not the film for that, where you can resonate with the character. You just have to kind of like, is a paranoia film. That's what you have to concentrate on. So I understand it, but I disagree with it. But at the same time, I understand.
So I think different things are important in different movies. And here, I think it is the case that the characters are not terribly well developed, and we spend very little time on their personal issues and their personal relationships and so on. And like if you put a gun to my head and told me to kind of define each, like, and describe each character, like for some of them I could do it, for others not so much. But I think that's okay for a couple of different reasons. For one, because them not knowing each other terribly well is part of the point, that they don't know, like they have been on this Arctic station for a while now, and they kind of know each other, but ultimately they're co-workers, right? They're not friends, they're not a family, and for them to kind of stick to themselves and to not be the closest in terms of their personal relationships, I think is totally in character and totally appropriate to the situation. And also, I think they do have personalities. They're just not part of the plot. So I think for each one, when you look at their reactions to the crisis and how they react to stress and what choices they make, you can see that there's a personality there. It's just we don't put a spotlight on it, right? We don't have a scene for each one establishing their personality and their unique character quirk or whatever. When Blair kind of realizes the true extent of what this infection means, right? He just trashes the entire place, destroys all evidence, and just kind of makes sure that nothing makes it out, right? Like no sample exists, nothing like that. And from that, you can infer what he cares about and how he looks at things, right? But he doesn't need to give a big speech about it, right? And the same is kind of true for every other character. They feel like real people. Like I've seen this before in like action movies or in horror movies or something like that, where the characters are just placeholders, right? They're just there to fill space, and they maybe have one character trait each or something, and that's it. But they don't feel like real people. And these characters feel like real people to me. It's just that I don't have enough information to really know what their deal is, but I'm convinced that it exists. They have one. Mm-hmm. And I think the story itself doesn't require any of it, so no time is spent on it. And also them being a little bit distant and a little bit on some level similar, like in terms of their demeanor and stuff like that, I think is also part of it's appropriate to the situation, right? Because they are all there to fulfill a function, right? One is the mechanic, one is the medic, one is the biologist, right? They would get to know each other personally, but it's not about their personal relationships and their personalities, right? So I think the movie strikes this balance of they feel like real people, and we don't need to know much more about them in order for them to feel real and for the story to work.
No, I agree. I'm just looking at it from the audience perspective, right? Because one of their complaints was that it's pretty much just cheap thrill and just gore, right? So that tells me that, okay, so for them, they were missing the whole personal relationship development and the whole backstory of the characters, which I understand. I don't think we need one all the time, because I do believe that you did mention like a few points which pretty much tells us about their personality. Like when obviously one of the what would refer them as scientists, doctors, or how do you refer them?
There's Blair, the biologist.
Yeah, but when
he's the guy who devises the test and who kind of study. He does the autopsies and stuff like that. So he reacts differently to it compared to Childs, the mechanic, right? Like they just have different outlooks on things, have different priorities. They're not the same person. You couldn't just switch them around and have the scene unfold the same way. And that's to me what it means for a character to be cardboard cutout or one-dimensional, is when there's nothing to them and you could just shuffle them around and it wouldn't impact anything. Like where a bad slasher movie might just needs bodies to walk into like a dark hallway or something, or into the woods or something. And I don't think that's the case here. So I think it's fine. Or like that the dog handler really loves his dogs, and as a result, he makes mistakes. Like he's too slow to put down a dog that he knows is infected or suspects is infected and stuff like that, right? That's a personality trait, right? So they're not all the same person.
Hey man, this was a good movie. In terms of like the characters, for you, which one stood out?
Like for me, it's very much an ensemble thing, right? It's about the group trying to figure it out, right? And I can't really, like McReady, played by Kurt Russell, is definitely the main character, right? He's one of the two that survives in the end, and we follow him for a lot of it. He makes a lot of the decisions, and I never really cared for him. Like there's nothing for me if I say, oh, that's cool, I want to see more of this character. Maybe Blair, because he's the one who figures things out and who tries to understand it, and then use that knowledge to help people survive. Like that kind of that I can kind of relate to that idea. Like for me, it's not about the individual characters in this movie, right? But I think Blair is probably the one who's the most interesting. Or like if I could rewrite, well, if I had to rewrite the movie with more focus on one, Blair might be the one for me. How about you?
Me, I would say, what's his name? So the one that survived at the end, Jay McCready? Is that his name?
So McCready is the helicopter pilot, right? And then the other person who survives is Childs, the mechanic.
Yeah, sorry. So is the helicopter pilot, the one that pretty much went rogue?
Yeah, McCready.
He was my stand-up because he was like that necessary evil that was needed to kind of like spice things up and trigger the paranoia. So I think, he definitely him.
He certainly drives things forward, right? But
yeah,
I wouldn't necessarily say he sparks the paranoia.
For me personally, I'd say like he spices things up.
Yeah, he forces the issue in a few places, and that forces people to react and make decisions and drive things forward. But yeah, I think we've mentioned it. But like one of the things that really works about this is how professional everybody is. Like there's no cheap drama here. It's just intelligent people trying to survive a difficult situation. It's a lot like Alien in that way. And I think that just always makes it a better story.
So realism for you is important.
Like it depends on who they are, but these people would keep their calm, right? Like these people would stay calm. These people would try to figure it out, even if they dislike each other, they would work together. Like that's like all of these are professionals and scientists, and they're there for a reason. Like all of them are in the Arctic for some kind of reason, right? And that then carries over when it's about survival, right? And they are already they volunteer to be in an environment where every day is a struggle for survival, right? And where you have to be professional and you can't, indulge in drama or whatever, right? You have to be professional even if you don't like the other person. You just still have to work together, and that kind of translates into how they react in their crisis. And I think it makes for a better story. It makes it more interesting and more enjoyable to watch. And when they do make mistakes, it's earned, right? Because they just have this one blind spot, or they're tired, or they're paranoid, or they're afraid. But their baseline is be professional adults.
I think that's as well. That was like my kind of standout, was the whole, like, I could imagine, like, even like what I actually enjoyed was that even though these people were professionals and even though they're one of the smartest people, obviously, from their country, it was enjoyable, and it was very like, I could tell that this would actually happen in terms of how they were getting, like, how they were breaking down. It felt slow, but it felt not too much, not slow. It felt like at the right pace. It's like they didn't off rip end up, when something crazy happens, then all of a sudden everyone just loses their cool, loses their ish, and then they just pretty much go out of their element, right? They're not. Yes. But this one, it was a slow breakdown of how they're slowly breaking mentally. So yeah, I agree with you there as well.
And it's been a while since movies did this, right? Like it's easy to say they wouldn't make a movie like this anymore, but they also didn't make movies like this like very, very often in the 2010s and 2000s a little bit. Like the 2000s had this fetishization of the professional, right? Like the FBI agent and the scientist and the special forces type. So there was a little bit of that, but a lot of it, like there for a while now, there's been this trend towards kind of like childish drama, and just watching adults do their thing, even under stress, is something that I think as time has gone on, fewer and fewer movies actually do. And I can't prove this. It's just a feeling, right? Like that's kind of been the general trend. And so when I go back to an 80s movie, 70s movie, and everybody is an adult, it's refreshing. And that's not just because older movies are always better or anything like that, but it's like that's one, like it's a trend that has been happening over the last decades, right? That characters in movies less and less behave like adults that you can actually see behave like that in the real world, right?
I think that's because of the universal effect. They just want to make everything inclusive. Obviously, for a bigger audience equals bigger money. So
yeah, well, I'm not really talking about like
Well,
who people are, right? I'm talking about just how people behave, like in terms of their personalities.
yeah.
Right? That people make responsible decisions and are disciplined and things like that, right? The things you would associate with adults.
No,
You know,
yeah, but just to add to that, it's like I think for some reason people are kind of put off by serious tone type of films. I don't know why. I generally love them. One of my biggest complaints is that I think a lot of these movies nowadays, like you say, are very childish. Even like I'm talking about like the 18 rated type of movies. A lot of the times they're childish. They just seem like for more younger audience, even though it's R rated. Whereas this one, like it did feel mature. So I don't know what it is, but it feels like just like serious tone movies have to kind of be like watered down for the audience. So that's why I'm saying more universal in that sense.
I think it's a bit like Marvel humor, right? In the sense that if you do it once, it can be refreshing and fun to watch, and then you do it again and again and again, and suddenly everything feels the same, right? So at some point, people have lost that balance, right? Where having a character kind of be a bit wacky and a bit unhinged and a bit irresponsible can be fun to watch, but if everybody is like that, it gets tedious very quickly. And then you go back like to a movie before this happened, and it's like, oh, is that how adults are supposed to behave? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's not like old movies are always better about everything, right? But it's like one of those trends. And it kind of comes and goes a little bit, right? It's kind of hard to find a movie in which people actually behave like serious professionals a lot of the time. Not always. You can find them, but it's not the norm.
Yeah.
All right. What else is there to say about The Thing?
I would say I think for me mainly it was just obviously the play on paranoia and the adaptability obviously of the monster. It kind of felt like the Alien in a way, in terms that it was, well, to be fair, they did say that it was adapting and it was like kind of like learning and it was getting smarter. So I think the way that was executed as well was really good, because you see the progression and how smart it's getting. So that was definitely another highlight for me.
Yeah. I think there are parallels in terms of it goes through different phases, right? And here it's just like in Alien, you have the 3 different phases. And so throughout the movie, it changes its form. And here, like in every scene, and often within a scene, it changes, right? So that's kind of the fun. Okay, what else will they come up with?
How would you compare this film amongst other monster movies? So I think I've asked you this before. So you wouldn't say it's the best, but you say it's one of the best, right?
I think it's definitely up there. Like saying it's the best, that's a tough call to make, just exactly which one is the best. So I'm just really into monster designs, and I want to see creativity on screen. And I want to say, oh, that's cool, or that's creative, or something like that. And this just has that like almost every other minute, right?
How do you think?
And I think it's unbeatable at just the creativity in the monster design.
How do you think today's audience would receive this film?
If it came out as a new movie today, I don't know. I actually think it would land pretty well, because.
So don't you think they'll have a similar opinion that the audience back in the day felt in terms of that regarding like the characters, for example?
Maybe. It's become very hard to impress people with visual effects, right? Because we are used to CGI being photorealistic and perfect and limitless. But what's been a shortage of is cool things to put on screen, right? And like whenever somebody actually does something creative with the tools, it kind of stands out. And I think if this one came out and really made full use of all special effects technologies, CGI and practical and whatever else, but uses those tools to its full potential and put a lot of creativity into every incarnation of the thing, I think that would stand out, because like there's no teasing the audience with this, right? There's no, okay, there are 2 cool shots and then 2 hours of build up to that or something like that, right? It just keeps going. Like the thing shows up first relatively quickly, and there's no idle time. And like the first 20 minutes to 30 minutes are establishing what happened, what the thing is, where it came from, and then very quickly we actually see it do things, right? I think the first time it comes out is in the kennel, right, where the infected dog is put among the others and starts infecting them, and it turns into this giant pile of fur and blood. And from there, it just doesn't stop. And I think the amount of creativity that is in this is applied to modern CGI technology could be something special, where it's just this wild ride that doesn't stop. Just this approach of doing one creative scene after the next, and you never know what's going to come next. But if when it comes, it feels like it belongs, and it doesn't feel arbitrary. And in hindsight, it kind of feels like a cohesive whole. Like, I think that would resonate with audiences. And on that basis, I think it would land pretty well. I think also that's why it's held up so well with modern audiences. Like, it's not like this secret, like, insider tip that nobody's heard of, but a couple of people are really into it. Like this has only gotten more popular over time, and I think it is because of the creativity, right? It's not just about, hey, how cool does this one shot look? But like, the entire movie is just steeped in creativity and putting cool images on screen. And I think that is something that modern blockbusters kind of, like, if you go back through a lot of our reviews this year, a lot of the time I say, okay, they had this one cool scene or this one cool shot, but that's 5 minutes of the movie. And why wasn't the entire movie like that? Right? And I think a lot of modern movies really have this problem where they have one cool idea, but it's not enough to fill the movie, or they don't fill the movie with stuff like this. And you don't get a lot of it. And you get a lot of waiting around until it gets good and then it's over. That kind of thing. And The Thing doesn't do that. The Thing very much just gives you, I think it's an hour 40 something, and there's always something interesting happening. It's always moving forward. It's always introducing something new, or it's paying something off, or whatever it is. And that even today is above average. That still makes it a top tier movie, just by doing that.
Yeah, because I feel like with today's movies, it's like it's one or the other. It's either the CGI and the effects. Because with this movie, I think it's got great effects as well as a good story as well. Whereas in this generation, it's like it's one or the other. It's either a good story lacking the whole creativity when it comes to the effects and the CGI and that, or it's a CGI fest minus a great story. So I do agree. I do believe that this would actually do well with today's audiences. The only thing is, I do also agree there would be like another audience that might agree with the other, obviously with the audience back in the day, in terms of the whole lack of engagement with the character. Because because a lot of the times people just, I don't think a lot of people, I remember I was speaking to a few people, they say don't really like thinking too deeply when it comes to movies. They just want to enjoy themselves. Whereas this one, you kind of have to, you kind of have to do a bit more thinking than the average film of this generation. So yeah, it could go both ways. But it is interesting that it has actually grown in popularity. Yeah, it is interesting. I'm just a bit shocked that it didn't do so well back in the day. Because,
I was surprised about that too. Like, I just read about that recently, and apparently every critic hated it.
Crazy.
And it also came out in a very crowded, like, it came out right after E.T. And like, if you look at the releases in 1982, it's crazy. That year was ridiculous for cinema.
Horror even big back in the day? Was it? Because I remember.
I don't know. I don't think people.
Because the reaction to The Exorcist wasn't too great, was it?
Was that 69? So over 10 years ago. Before that, I don't think it's about the fact that it was horror. I think it was about that it didn't have a happy ending, and it didn't, like, the heroes didn't win in the end.
Against the norm, pretty much.
Yeah. So I think that is just what people expected from movies at the time, and it didn't deliver that. And it very much it delivers this is not a crowd pleaser, right? It delivers a very specific thing, and you like that thing or you don't, and that's kind of it. But if you are into the kind of movie this is, I think you get something that just fires on all cylinders. All the pieces belong. It all supports each other. The effects and the gore and the fights and the characters and the atmosphere and the mystery, they all support each other as part of one big whole. And there's nothing you could take out and have it still work. And there's nothing redundant or just piled on or to check a box or whatever. It's just like a coherent, focused story that pretty much does one thing, and it does it as best as it can.
Yeah,
I think that's what great movies are made of.
Yeah, I don't think there's much to add. I think we've pretty much gone through the highlights. I think my impression of old movies is slightly shifting. Obviously after watching The Alien and now watching The Thing, is that okay? I think I'm starting to yeah, my mentality towards older movies is starting to shift. So the thing was it was a pleasant surprise, a disturbing one, but it was a pleasant one. I enjoyed it.
I don't think there's such a thing as a perfect movie, but this gets close. Right? Like there is not a lot you can really criticize about this in terms of it just doesn't, in terms of things that just don't work or that are just mistakes. I think the main thing is, can you get on board with the kind of movie this is? And if yes, then you're in for a ride.
Perfect movie? God damn.
No, I said that there's no such thing as
I know you said, but it's close to it. I know, but
yeah,
that's how you get down. Like I'd have to think about that. Yeah. But I do see why. I do see why. Guys, thank you very much for tuning into today's episode. If you enjoyed what you've watched, please like, share, and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts down below on what you thought about the thing. If you've watched it. If you haven't watched it and you are going to watch it after this, then let us know what you thought about it after you watch it. We'll catch you next week. Thank you very much. Au revoir.
Bye-bye.